Good evening to the subscribers of PBF and those of our business community who have tuned in, and we thank the PBF for arranging this dialogue this afternoon. Ladies and gentlemen, the outbreak of the coronavirus is a crisis like no other. It has been equated to a wartime period. In the words of the IMF, it feels like a war, and in many ways it is. The pandemic is the greatest public health and economic emergency facing humanity in peacetime history. It will severely constrain our public health resources. Already it has caused major and in some cases permanent disruptions to the global economy. Global supply chains have been severely interrupted, trade has slowed, and so have logistics. Financial and commodity markets remain volatile. Measures implemented to curb the spread of the virus are shrinking the productive capacity of economies. Demand has been negatively impacted through reduced consumer spending, loss of income, and of course, job losses. Households and firms in distress have increased. Latest figures from the IMF indicate that the Great Lockdown, which refers to countries' responses to COVID-19, will lead to the worst economic downturn since the Great Depression of 1929. Global growth in 2020 is projected to fall to -3%. Growth in advanced economies is forecast to come in at -6%. Emerging markets and developing economies are expected to grow at -1%. In our country, South Africa, it is estimated that the nationwide lockdown in response to COVID-19 is costing the economy almost 13 billion rand per day. South African Reserve Bank expects GDP to contract by 6.1% in 2020, with a potential loss of 370,000 jobs. Our fiscal deficit is expected to total 12% of GDP, while the debt to GDP ratio is expected to climb to above 81% by 2021, putting a further strain on our public finances and raising our cost of borrowing. Small, micro, and medium-sized businesses are the hardest hit by the economic fallout of the pandemic. According to a recent Stats SA Business Impact Survey of the COVID-19 pandemic in South Africa, 85.4% of the businesses surveyed reported a turnover below normal average. 46% indicated temporary closures or post-trading activity. 36.8% reported that the size of their workforce is expected to decrease, while 54% reported that they cannot survive beyond 3 months. The human cost of the pandemic is equally devastating. At the last count, more than 3,600 South Africans have tested positive for the virus, and 65 have succumbed to it. South Africa has made progress in slowing the rate of infections. However, experts have warned of an inevitable spike in the number of infections as mass testing intensifies. Broadly, our response to the pandemic has been threefold. Firstly, to save lives and containing the spread of the virus. Secondly, providing economic relief to distressed households and firms, as well as the implementation of measures to increase social support to protect the poor and the vulnerable. Thirdly, is the implementation of structural reforms to reduce the cost of doing business, support for job-creating sectors, including the formal sector, attracting foreign and domestic investments, stabilizing restructuring of state-owned enterprises, as well as ensuring the sustainability of our public finances. Measures implemented to support business include the following. The Unemployed Insurance Funds has set aside 60 billion rand to help employees who will be unable to work during the lockdown. The Industrial Development Corporation, IDC, has made available 3 billion rand for the procurement of essential medical supplies. The Small Enterprise Finance Agency has approved the postponement of loan repayments for a period of 6 months. A total of 500 billion rand has been set aside, 500 million rand has been set aside for small business, debt relief and business growth facilities. Government has also reprioritized 1.2 billion rand to provide relief to smallholder farmers and to contribute to food security. The Department of Tourism has made available an additional 200 million rand to assist SMMEs in the tourism and hospitality industry. National Treasury has put forward a set of exceptional tax measures to support businesses through this period. This includes an increase to 35% of the proportion of pay as you earn that can be deferred. The Solidarity Fund has earmarked more than 120 million rand to provide food relief to the most vulnerable in our society. Various private sector initiatives has also been announced to provide direct support, particularly to SMMEs. On Tuesday, our President Cyril Ramaphosa, announced a historic 500 billion rand social economic support package for households and firms. This package is equivalent to 10% of South Africa's GDP. We welcome this bold and decisive intervention by the President and our team in government. The scale and magnitude of the package indicates our government's commitment to doing everything necessary to respond to this crisis, to save lives and to restore livelihoods. It includes a special 20 billion rand COVID-19 health budget, wide-ranging support for the most vulnerable through a 50 billion rand, which is for expanded social grants, the distribution of food parcels and vouchers, and the 200 billion rand loan guarantee schemes for firms in distress. Additional funding of 20 billion will be made available to municipalities for improved service delivery. Government is also working on additional support measures for vulnerable and affected sectors such as the taxi industry. To fund this massive social and economic stimulus, about 130 billion rand will be reprioritized within the current budget. The rest of the funds will be raised from both local sources such as the UIF and from global partners and international finance institutions including the World Bank, IMF, the New Development Bank, and the African Development Bank. We will ensure, as South Africa as the country, that the conditions placed on the loan funding raised do not compromise our national sovereignty. In line with the trend globally, South African Reserve Bank has also stepped in to support the real economy. The bank has cut the repo rate 3 times already this year. This includes 200 basis points cut in quick succession. A cut in the repo rate puts money straight back into the economy, providing relief to households and businesses. In addition, By relaxing some of the regulatory requirements applicable to commercial banks, the Reserve Bank has in effect released up to 550 billion rand for banks to extend loan repayment holidays or to on lend to household and firms. Accordingly, commercial banks have announced measures to help households and firms in distress. These include installment reductions, interest and fee deferrals and extension of loan terms, fee waivers, and other relief measures. Insurance companies are also providing relief to customers in the form of premium holidays and deferrals, amongst others. Ladies and gentlemen, these interventions by various sectors of our society prove that as a nation we have accepted that what we are facing is a crisis like no other, requiring a response like no other. We are determined to save lives and restore livelihoods. Comrades and friends, the coronavirus and its impact on the economy provides an opportunity for us to relook at our industrialization agenda and to begin to prioritize local content and manufacturing. Our country cannot continue to rely on importing the vast majority of its manufactured products. Currently, we are importing more than 70% of health equipment and supplies needed in the fight against COVID-19, including masks, ventilators, and surgical gloves. This is not sustainable. A deliberate, carefully planned and managed program of import substitution is the way to go. The time has come for South Africa to reverse the deindustrialization trend and start rebuilding its industrial capacity. There is a need for partnership to revive local manufacturing. Private savings can also be used for this purpose. Comrades, COVID-19 has rewritten the rules of economics and business. It has ushered us all into a new normal. Post-COVID-19, we need a fresh approach to the economy, and in a way, we need a fresh approach to the way we do business. The sense of togetherness that has taken root in our country in response to the pandemic must persist beyond the crisis. It must lead to a post-pandemic social contract that will benefit all of us. It must lead us to a more humane and more caring society. In the meantime, let us continue to work together through this unprecedented crisis. The Progressive Business Forum stands ready to assist businesses in accessing relief measures as announced by government, and we thank them for that. We are confident that in time, businesses will be up and running again, production will be back on track, supply chains will be restored, and the wheels of our economy will grind once more. Together we will get through this. We will triumph. We will rise above this challenge. We thank once more the PBF for arranging this dialogue so that we are able as a business community to continue to engage and find solutions that our country needs.